Week 16 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes here, once again, one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football, week in and week out for this team here and for fantasy owners. And this week, a good matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. Well, we know this secondary isn't that good. We know they don't really stop anyone as a Seattle team. And Kansas City back home at Arrowhead as well, and he's found a new weapon in Jared McKinnon out of the backfield that's been catching a lot of passes, taking some plays to the house. And this week here versus Seattle, I think Mahomes puts up number one numbers once again. And I got him at one. Number two, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So over the last few weeks here, Allen's getting healthier in that elbow. And he's been putting up huge fantasy numbers, especially last week in a big division game versus the Miami Dolphins. He had over 40 fantasy points in that one, is Josh Allen. So now, I know his wide receivers aren't all in sync with him. Stephon Diggs still doing his thing. Dawson Knox, 2 touchdowns in last week's game, which is always a big thing to get Dawson Knox involved with. Last season, he had 9 touchdowns. So this week here in Chicago, in the Windy City, we know this Bear defense isn't all that great, especially trading Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith a few weeks ago at the NFL trade deadline. So right here, Josh Allen, I think, gets ready to roll once again. And I got him at 2. Number 3, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. I know last week was a disappointing game for Herbert, where he failed to throw a touchdown and he only had 10 fantasy points in that one versus the Tennessee Titans. But this week, I think he bounces back on Monday Night Football at the Indianapolis Colts. We know they can't stop anyone, especially after blowing a historic 33-0 lead and losing the ball games to the Minnesota Vikings. So right here, I think Herbert gets back on track this week. His weapons are 100% to go, it looks like, in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams now back over the last few weeks here. And Austin Eckler as well, he looks ready to go after a little bit of a scare in last week's ball game, but he came back and he's fine. So I think Herbert bounces back with a vengeance in this one in Indianapolis. And I got him at 3. Number 4, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow, last week he didn't have to do much. The defense set him up for some easy red zone and touchdown plays. Where he threw for 4 touchdowns and over 30 fantasy points is Joe Burrow. This week, I know it's a little bit of a tough matchup at a New England Patriot defense that is pretty solid. But when you got wide receivers like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd as a good number 3 wide receiver, every week Joe Burrow, he's going to put up at least 25, 30 fantasy points. And this week here in New England, I think he gets the job done once again. Like I said, one of the better quarterbacks in fantasy football. And I got him at 4. Number 5, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So the last 2 weeks here, he's been putting up huge fantasy points, is Kirk Cousins, with over 40 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. And this week here, he's got a good matchup versus mediocre New York Giant defense. This ball game in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson having another amazing season here for Cousins. TJ Hawkinson, he's been a great addition to the offense. And even Dalvin Cook now out of the backfield's making some big plays. So last week after down 33-0, this Minnesota Viking team, they didn't quit in that ball game. They buckled down. And Cousins in that one went for 460 yards. So this week here, I don't think it's a ball game where they're going to be playing catch-up, even though I didn't think it was last week as well going into that one. But this week here versus the Giants, I think he'll have a good game once again, is Kirk Cousins. And like I said, the last couple weeks, he's really gone out there and put up some monster games. Number 6, Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields, I know it's a tough matchup versus the Buffalo Bills, but this is a guy who's matchup proof, and he's going to get at least 7 to 10 fantasy points weekly on the ground. Here is Justin Fields, and their only chance here is for Fields to be a crazy playmaker in this game versus the Buffalo Bills and make a lot of plays with his legs, obviously. So this week, tough matchup, no doubt about it. But Fields, I could see a stat line of 150 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and at least 70, 80 yards rushing here for Justin Fields, which quarterback we know has been a pretty weak position this season. So at number 6, I think it's decent for him to be in the middle of the pack. Number 7, Tua Tagovailoa for the Miami Dolphins. So 2 of the last few weeks, the numbers have definitely dropped off with tough matchups versus Buffalo, the 49ers thrown in there, and the New England Patriots. But this week here versus a Green Bay defense that is middle of the pack, I think Tua and the Dolphins get on track. It's a home game where the weather obviously most likely will be nice over there in Miami. And when you got 2 wide receivers like a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, slumps aren't going to last that long. So I think this week he breaks out of the slump is Tua. And this Dolphin team is going to put up a decent amount of points. And I got him at 7. Number 8, Trevor Lawerence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars and Jets Thursday Night Football here tonight. And Trevor Lawerence, he's been playing out of his mind over the last few weeks. And what a victory last week to come back from 17 and beat a solid Dallas Cowboy unit. So him and Zay Jones on the same page. Him and Christian Kirk, they've been on the same page the whole season. And Evan Ingram as well has been one of the better tight ends over the last month. So with all those factors playing well for Trevor Lawerence, we just saw last season was a bad rookie year for him. But now with all those guys signed in free agency from Jacksonville, things are starting to get together. And this week here at the New York Jets, I think he could stretch that defense. I know they got some good playmakers, C.J. Mosley, Sauce Gardner, Quinton Williams on the defensive end here as this New York Jet team. But Trevor Lawerence, like I said, he's been picking apart pretty good defenses over the last couple weeks. And this week here at the Jets, I got him at 8, number 9, Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I know Tom Brady, it hasn't been a great season here for him, but he's still up there in passing yards. I know a lot of attempts, but this week a very good matchup at the Arizona Cardinals that pretty much can't stop anyone. We saw Brett Rypien last week have a good ball game versus them in Denver. So right now I think Tom Brady could pick apart this defense. Mike Evans last week, it was good to see him get on track a little bit. And Chris Godwin still getting 100% from his ACL. So right now the Bucs, I know they're struggling this season, 6-8 in the season, still in first place in the division. And this week here, I think Tom Brady comes out gunning and they're going to put up points at Arizona. Pretend Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. So it looks like he's going to be out Tyler Lockett in this ball game. But Geno Smith, we know, has been putting up numbers all season long. I know last week only 17 fantasy points, which obviously is a disappointment compared to what he's been putting up, 23-plus points per game for the most part over the last couple months here. But he's still got DK Metcalf, Marquise Goodwin, a decent number 2 wide receiver to fill in. Noah Fant, he's been playing good football over the last couple weeks for the most part here. And it's a game where they're going to be catching up and chasing points is this Seattle Seahawks team. So I think Geno Smith comes out in this one. They got to be aggressive. You got Kenneth Walker back in the backfield coming back last week where he can make a few plays out of the backfield. So this week here, I think Geno Smith as a sound guy for 20 fantasy points or above is definitely a possibility. And I got him at 10, number 11, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar Jackson, he's missed the last few weeks here, no doubt about it. And hopefully he comes back healthy. And he's got a good matchup here versus the Atlanta Falcons. That their defense that don't really make a lot of stops. This is a home game. I know Jackson hasn't practiced so far early going, but the Ravens need him. Tyler Huntley, the last 2 ball games, just hasn't gotten anything going. And I know Lamar, his stats definitely fell off as well over the last few weeks here before he got injured. But this week here in a good matchup, it's a good time to come back versus the Atlanta Falcons. With Lamar, we know he's an athlete. We know he could still go out there and get the job done. I know Devin Duvernay's out for the season now with a foot injury. But Lamar, if he plays at number 11 and the 12th and final quarterback, I'm ranking this week here is Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. I know it's a road game here for the Lions, but Jared Goff, he's been a sound football player this season and a guy that Detroit obviously believes in. And this Lion team's playing great football now. They started the season 1-6, and now they've bumped all the way up to 7-7 on the year. So right now he's got good weapons. Amon St. Brown, once again a top receiver in this league this season. Brock Wright last week, I know he hasn't done much so far since he's been the fill-in for Hockenson since he got traded, but a big 51-yard touchdown last week. And you got the rookie Jameson Williams who's due to break out, and DJ Chark, who's had a couple pop games. So this week here at a Carolina team that's a mediocre defense, especially at home, I think Jared Goff could get the job done. And he's at least a guy good for 18-plus fantasy points. So that's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.